everyone. It's Bob D here, Bob DeConchi. I have a special session of our recordings today. We have here few important people in organized dentistry, and all of you who have been following the group know that the issues are quite important these days. And I felt that we needed to talk to this, and to their credit, the ADA reached out to me and told me that they wanted to meet. Because we have limited time, I'm going to actually introduce everyone so they can take the time to explain the issues. Also, at the end, if we have time, I'm going to give everybody a chance to speak and say what they need to say. For transparency reasons, I want everybody to know that when I wrote this up, I emailed the topics to the participants because I don't want this to be a gotcha moment. I want it to be prepared answers, and I want them to know the answers instead of thinking about it. So here we go. We have Dr. Linda Edgar, the ADA president. Linda, you have so many accomplishments that if I start listing them, we'll run out of time. Dr. Randall Markarian is supposed to be one of our rising stars within the ADA. He is an orthodontist in Illinois and is the 8th district trustee to the ADA. We have Mr. Mike Graham, Senior Vice President, Government and Public Affairs. And Mike, you've been with the ADA, I think, for almost 30 years. Then we have Mr. Chad Olson, Director of State Government Affairs, who's been with the ADA for close to 7 or 8 years, right?
7, yes.
7 years, right. I want to start by saying that this is a fact-finding session, right? I'm not that smart. I want you guys to explain this situation to me. I want to know how everything works. Then I'm going to form an opinion. This is not here for me to bash anyone or to criticize anyone. I'm going to ask some questions that may sound like that, but we're going to start by that. I want to ask the first question that everybody has is that when this thing came about and you guys started talking, we all know about the Massachusetts DLR. Were the Massachusetts team, such as Dr. Riscala or Dr. Abdul or others within that team that helped us? I know there were a lot of people helping that, right? Dr. Riscala is very important to the equation because he wrote the law and he spent his own money passing it. Did you guys consulted them or at least talked to them and getting their input?
Mike? I can start. I can start
ahead,
on that
Chad.
if you'd like. So I'd like to say hello, everybody. First of all, for those of the dentists that don't know me out there, it's a pleasure to be on this and talk about what I think is a mutual fight on the insurance. And taking a step back, I hear all the time in this role about the frustration that you all feel about the dental benefits and dental insurance, et cetera. And much of my 7 years at the ADA has been about dealing with that specifically. Kind of the reason I was brought on. I think a lot of the reason I was brought on was my past knowledge of dental insurance because I did work for a company in the past. So that's the big picture, stepping back. Like, this is about dental insurance reform. And wow, what a victory Proposition 2 was. And all credit to Dr. Riscala and the team out there in Massachusetts for pushing forward on that. And go into your question, and Dr. D, Bob, I chatted, he and I chatted ahead of time, so I'll be calling him Bob, but thanks for that. But Bob and I, Bob asked the question, was Dr. Riscala consulted on, and it's specific to NCOIL. And it's important to understand what the National Council of Insurance Legislators is and why what we did there is a win. It is a win, and it will spread an important issue. And I think that's the big message. It'll spread an important issue. We're all rowing in the same direction, dental loss ratio, which will make dental plans better. When I provided testimony at NCOIL, when I talk about dental loss ratio, medical loss ratio for dental plans in the press, It is about the value of dental benefits being so low for consumers. It's untenable. It needs to change. I think there's a movie with Jack Nicholson in it, you know, something's got to give. Something has to give. And that's what we hear from dentists around the country all the time. So what a victory it was, you know, question two, Dr. Riscala being the spearhead, basically all of dentistry, American Dental Association, state dental societies around the country, all pulling together to get that victory set up. But as we know, a proposition is a unique set of circumstances, a ballot question, very unique. There's no changing it. There's no negotiation. The language is the language, and it's voted on by the voters, and that is set in stone. What we wanted to do with the ADA was equip the state societies and the dentists around the country in the best way possible to get as many dental plans operating under the auspices of a dental loss ratio as quickly as possible. And what I think this conversation is about today is not so much about are we rowing in the same direction, because I think we are. I think we are. I'm a believer in Dr. Riscala. I'm a believer in the things that he's pushing for, and I think that there is dental loss ratio is one of those issues we agree on and want to push for. But what you have to remember is the legislative process is different than the proposition process. And we wanted to equip our state societies to succeed on the legislative side. So this is a long way, I work in politics, so maybe there's a little bit of a long-winded way of getting to this, but NCOIL, the National Council of Insurance Legislators, what is it and why would the ADA go there? And how did Dr. Riscala and his influence fit into that process? NCOIL is a well-respected group that brings together legislators who are very important or interested in or very important on, say, insurance committees, banking committees. They're high up. They're concerned about this and they're interested in it. NCOIL does not say they write model legislation, as I think I saw in one of Dr. Riscala's videos that they are setting they're trying to determine well-considered policy, I think is their slogan in a nutshell. What we want to make sure everybody understands is, yes, they're providing this well-considered policy, but we view what is done at NCOIL as just the starting point on moving dental loss ratio. But we wanted to make sure that starting point was not too low. It wasn't too low. So how does NCOIL work? NCOIL takes just real quickly, Bob. I this is really important. It's very important.
Sure, go ahead.
Thing. So NCOIL works this way. Instead of it being Chad Olson is providing language and for the legislators to consider, instead it needs to be based on something that actually exists. Okay. So how this all started was, and NCOIL has its different committees. It has a health committee. The chair of that health committee, Delegate Steve Westfall from West Virginia, he's a friend of West Virginia dentists. He submitted a bill in 2023 that had an 85% medical loss ratio for dental plans. So even beyond what's established in Massachusetts. When I saw that happen and knew he was the chair of the health committee, that's when I worked with the West Virginia Dental Association to ask him to introduce it as model legislation for consideration. Okay. And then the process in NCOIL, it begins. There aren't negotiations that are happening between me and payers or leadership of the ADA and payers, and that's happening in the back room. Not at all. This is an introduction of language and then a process where different versions are looked at. Colorado was brought forward. In my view, Colorado, they're doing a great job out there because they're trying to get the ball rolling, but it was all stakeholders thought that was an iterative process. It should not be looked at as a standard, even by the stakeholders in Colorado. Unfortunately, the payers put it forward and said it was a standard, okay? But it's in the mix, all right? So again, there are floating pieces of legislation working their way through as legislators discuss things. The ADA never conceded anything at this point or was involved in negotiations at this point. It was these pieces of legislation being brought forward to be discussed. It was only at the end, right? Only at the end that the payers knew that they could not get a vote for just transparency. They could not get that vote, that they said, okay, we're willing to have discussions with the ADA. And at that point, the legislators said to me, Chad, we're going to pass something. And by God, I did not want that to be reporting only. And I know the leadership of the ADA did not want that to be reporting only. We wanted the best result for the states around the country. And we wanted that to be, as we said, the floor. And so how does Dr. Riscala fit into this? Dr. Riscala's influence is in the background the entire time because of the well-established great law in Massachusetts. And by the way, I talk about it. I would talk about it all the time with any legislator that I was lobbying at NCOIL, talking about this issue. But again, our focus was arming the states in the best way possible. So when the discussions between ADA and NADP actually took place, it was working through the process within the ADA. And I know we want to get into that. I've tried to walk you through the beginnings of the process, but that's how Dr. Riscala is like, he's the influence behind the scenes, and his words speak through the draft of that proposition that he put forward. Thanks. Okay. I'll stop there.
No, I really appreciate it. Actually, I wanted to go over some rules that I wanted you guys to only take 30 seconds to answer. I give you some leeway.
Hey, thanks. Hey, I appreciate it, Bob. I do appreciate
because
it
it's important. Yeah, because it's important. I want to take this minute again. Also, we can put this aside. Is that you know, people need to understand what it is. For example, you used a lot of words that again, dentist. We should know, but we don't know. I also want to bring to people's attention is that I was one of the ones that questioned people who worked for different organizations before being hired by the ADA. But again, Linda, my sources tell me, everyone I asked, that Chad is a great soldier for us. And Chad is fighting for us. And Chad is 100% ADA, dentistry, and the profession. I'm going to let you speak to that, Chad, at the end, but I want to make sure we talk about that stuff. So I want to address.
Can I just real quick, Bob?
Sure.
Can I say, and I want others to speak, of course, but if I say a word that you don't get, I will stop. Stop me then and let me know.
Sure,
I want to make sure I communicate well.
I kind of say I don't get it.
Why don't you let Mike Graham at the beginning of this talk about the value of a
Linda,
person like Chad Olson?
With all due respect, I worked till 5 a.m. last night.
Yeah, I was up then too.
Okay, so I need to get to these questions, and I appreciate you guys an extra half hour so we can go through these, and I'm going to give you guys ample time as I promised. Chad, in 5 words or less, are there any plans to bring Dr. Riscala in as a consultant to these issues from going forward?
So Dr. Riscala and I we've been able to work together in Rhode Island last year on and by the way, it's almost a carbon copy of the Massachusetts ballot. And that legislation is getting reintroduced. So the state societies are very well aware of Dr. Riscala and the expertise he brings. I hope more will push forward like Rhode Island did and bring him in to talk about, especially legislative, language construction, the whys and wherefores on why you would want to have this clause and that clause.
But I don't know the answer now. Was the answer yes or no? I would like to see him involved. And we're going to leave that as that. Now maybe Randall can talk about, or maybe Dr. Edgar can talk about this. How are you guys gauging? Again, remember 30 seconds. I'm going to cut you off. If it's 2 people, it's going to be 1 minute. At the end, you will have time. How are you guys gauging members to see how they feel during and after this process? Are you guys listening to people? I am listening to members and non-members, and the only person that's talking in my group is Dr. Edgar. I don't see you guys having any information of how they feel about this. Was there any effort to do that, Dr. Markarian?
So I've been contacted by a number of people. I've also spoken with the Illinois State Dental Society officers. And in the discussions, I mean, there are some people that are concerned. So yes, I've gauged their concern and had discussions about why I think this moves DLR forward for us. I've also had quite a few people that are pleased with it because they understand now we will be able to get things moving forward that we wouldn't have in the past. For example, Illinois introduced an 80% MLR legislation or bill last year that stalled almost immediately. It was a non-starter. And now that we have some backup language to work with, we're going to reintroduce the same law, but the sponsor of the bill is very excited because as much as she'd like to get us what we're asking for, we have some room to negotiate, and it'll help move things forward. And I think there are a lot of members that understand that this actually gets the ball rolling.
Yeah, but I was talking specifically, I'm going to only follow with one follow-up question. I was specifically talking about this piece of agreement with at NCOIL with National Association of Dental Plans. Were there any efforts to discuss this with any of the members?
Every time, I'll take my 30 seconds.
Dr. Edgar.
Every time we go to different, I've flown 32,000 miles this month to different places. Every time we go, we talk to members about their pain points. You know, I've gone on your site for hours in the last week and tried to talk about what people are saying that may be right and what they're saying that they may have misunderstandings about. And I listen, you know, I listen, I give my email out. We're talking about this on top everywhere we go, because just like you, DLR is huge.
Yeah,
we have many states.
Still...
One more thing. I don't think my 30 seconds is up. I used to be a runner. I know how much time 30 seconds is. Our state in Washington is doing a DLR also, and I'm involved in that legislative committee. So I'm seeing both sides of this, but we are attuned to social media and the concerns.
I'm not talking again about social media. I'm talking about before,
and the 32,000 miles and talking with members one-on-one.
Before, during, and after.
Bob,
before,
can
during,
I,
or
Bob,
after.
can I?
Yes,
Hey,
go
Bob,
ahead.
real quickly on your point. What is the best access the ADA has to the wishes of its members?
Chad, if I tell you that, then you're going to take my
so
job.
It's a
but
loaded
I will
question.
tell you. I will tell you.
It's a loaded question.
No,
but my answer is ADA policy and what the House tells us they want us to do. Okay, that's the best answer. That's the most real answer and considered answer. And and let me tell you something, the policy on MLR, it exists. And what we did with the NCOIL model goes beyond that policy. We are, again, equipping our state societies to succeed on DLR for dentists, for the patients and for the dentists. And that is the best access we have. It is not, as I would argue, it is not what's said on social media.
Yeah,
it is the policy of the ADA.
I'm going to take a minute. I promise that I'm only going to be asking questions, but this policy needs to change, okay? This policy that you're calling social media and discounting it has to change, meaning social media is the new media. If you are not on these sites answering questions and discussing it, to me, the answer to this question was the members, the wet glove dentists were not involved in any of this. They were not, a focus group. Bring them in. Bring them in, talk to them. This is what we're planning to do. We're gonna move on because I feel like I got my answer. We're gonna talk about this few pages, and I want to get Mike involved because Mike, you seem to be at the ADA longer than any of us. There was a piece of paper given to the states called the talking points, and this it says that it's been going on for a year. These negotiations or discussions or whatever you were going to call it. I'd like to know who was the point on this? Was it Chad? Was it you? Was it Dr. Markarian? Who was the point on who approached NCOIL, which is basically NCOIL? I want to tell people who don't know, NCOIL is a organization. It's a conference basically that the legislators that write the laws for insurance companies gather around. Who approached you guys? or who approached them?
Right. And first of all, Bob, thanks again for hosting us, because this is actually our opportunity to speak to the dentists who we're going to have to engage in the legislative process if we expect to win. And every time we're united in dentistry, we win, Bob. We win. When we're not united, we lose. And we proved that during COVID, and I can give you lots of examples. So as soon as Massachusetts passed, we began to think about what's our next move? How do we use this? What's the most effective way? Because we're not going to do a ballot initiative in every state. Not all states allow ballot initiatives, so we couldn't even do that if we wanted to. And in some states, ballot initiatives are almost impossible to do. So we determined the legislative process. Now, we've actually used NCOIL in the past, and it has been extremely effective on a number of issues. And so we had that opportunity when Delegate Westfall said to us, I want to do DLR legislation. That looks like Massachusetts. That began the process, Bob. That began the process.
Okay.
And at that point,
from the ADA, who was it? Was it you or was it Chad that was point on this?
Well, I'm the guy who's in charge of government affairs, how we run it on the federal level and the state level. So Chad and I worked very closely on this. And I said, absolutely, let's go for it. It worked in the past. It was brilliant for us. Okay. So absolutely, why not take that opportunity, especially because he wanted to do what Massachusetts did, which we all agree is the gold standard.
And I hear again this Massachusetts team. Am I correct to assume that once again Dr. Riscala was not consulted on this to bring in as your initial contacts?
So can I just jump in and Bob, it's like you did not listen to what I said at the beginning in my answer. Mm-hmm. This is about the legislation that exists out there. There is no consulting with an individual person. As I said, I did not get to introduce legislation. We had to attach ourselves to a willing legislator who is willing to push something forward. 85% from West Virginia was, in fact, a higher percentage that we got in Massachusetts, and that was the original introduction, okay? So, and then it's an iterative process of different passed or bills being considered, those being brought forward. Discussions between NADP and ADA did not occur until the end of this last year, okay? And at that point, the correct leadership within the ADA was consulted. And I know you're interested in a lot in the process, but as I said, again, in my opening comments, Dr. Riscala was speaking through, the proposition that was successful.
Sorry, Chad.
I know you want to cut me off and kill that point.
I'm not going to cut you off, but again, when you tell me that I didn't listen to you, I have to tell you, as Linda is, I'm a very good listener. I listen to every word you said, but from what I'm hearing from you.
So Bob, the reason I said that, I believe you listen, but your comment indicated that you did not take in the information. It's like you were choosing to ignore it.
No, I do take the information. It appears that you don't take the information, and we want to be respectful to each other here, is that the people have spoken. They wanted Mo Riscala involved. I am getting to a point with you, okay? The fact that you could have picked up the phone and said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is what's in front of us. What do you think? That's it. I want to make sure that people, if I have cancer, I'm going to go look around the whole world to see who is the best oncologist and at least send them my lab results to check. But to me, it appears that this process did not happen with the ADA, and the Massachusetts team who wrote the law that you guys say spoke through did not, was not involved. It was not approached. I'm okay with the answers, to be honest with you, but I do listen, Chad, I promise.
But Bob, this does not, we're going to all states. This does not mean we don't want Mo to come in and help with all his expertise. I've watched every video. Well, let me finish. I've watched every video you've put on that Mo has, and I've taken notes on them. And we're in the beginning of this process, and he's very valuable. We really do appreciate him. So please don't paint us like we don't appreciate what he's added and what he can continue to add. He's, after all, on the ADA, put him on the dental benefits, correct? Isn't he chair of the committee in
Those are
Massachusetts?
different,
So, you know.
different topics, because I also know that he was pushed out of the DQA and wasn't accepted.
No. There's a whole, okay, we
Yeah,
could
I don't
talk an
wanna-
hour about that.
I don't
And
want to.
let me finish. I have talked to the DQA chair about why he wasn't admitted, and there is an answer, but you don't want to take the time on this call for that.
Exactly. That we
Yeah.
talk about that. I want him to come on. The ADA, the DQA chair can come and explain. But here's what want you guys to understand, what I'm getting at with the question so far. The optics, right? The optics of how you operate is causing dentists not to join the American Dental Association. I joined the ADA to help you recruit new members. You are making my job very, very difficult. I cannot tell people, look what they're doing, blah, 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 blah. But I get criticized because of that. So this is the reason these questions about Dr. Mo comes. I don't really care if you guys appreciate him or not, right? He is very popular. He is the person that everybody listens to. Use him. He's offering his services.
Hey,
Why
Bob,
is
I
that?
got a question for you. I'm
Sure.
going to throw a question back at you. You have cancer, you want the best oncologist. Do you want the best oncologist that has the electric billboard going down the highway that everyone sees? Or do you want the best oncologist that does the best work all the time and maybe is a little bit more under the radar and known for what they do? And I say that because what you're discounting on this is the strength of insurance knowledge on certain staff at the ADA. We don't have, it's not like you have people that don't know their way around dental benefits backwards and forwards, that also know how to read legislation. So I get it. Mo is very popular, but he is by no means the only person that has extensive knowledge on this. And I think that for the ADA, we have internal people that do a wonderful job with benefits. And I know that because of my 4 years on dental benefits. And since being involved in a lot of dental benefit projects at ADA, there's strong information there. So I get it. We didn't bring in Dr. Popular for this, but we have people that are more than capable at the ADA to understand this.
I actually, Dr. Markarian, I don't actually appreciate that response at all, because you're discounting him as a popular person, and you are not counting him as the expert in the country, because I do. I consider him
Okay, Bob,
an expert.
I'm gonna ask you this. Has Mo passed? He's passed an initiative with our help. Give us some credit. We did bring in 7 million toward that initiative. You know that.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you letting me say that. But this is legislation. Passing an initiative where you bring it to the public is completely different than trying to get a bill passed. A bill that has to be promoted by legislators. Has Mo done that? That's what we're dealing with this legislation.
I'm not saying hire Mo and fire Chad. I'm not hiring Mo should be the next Mike Graham.
I'm just asking the question.
Pick
as
up
far
the
as
phone. That's all I'm asking. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on, because we do have our thing. What I was trying to say is that Mo is not a billboard on the highway. Mo is the guy who wrote the law. Mo is the guy who worked tirelessly to pass this, right? And Mo was the guy who fired me up. I couldn't care less about organized dentistry for 20 years, okay? He got me going because of his passion, right? And I want this passion to be used to pave the way to bring more members. Remember, I'm very goal-oriented.
Yes. And we appreciate
that's
that.
what I want to do. Chad, go ahead. You're muted, Chad. somehow your microphone went
Doesn't
out.
look like he's muted.
I know, but his microphone went out. I can't hear him.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, apologies.
That's okay.
We are oriented and I want to speak and I can't. So one thing I just want to emphasize, because I know we're talking about Dr. Riscala and he is, you know, obviously part of this conversation, but in my mind, the goal to focus on is getting as many of the dental plans to abide by some sort of dental loss ratio as quickly as possible. That is the goal. And that is the goal that we operate under. And again, going back to the ADA policy, that is the goal we operate under. And I want to give an example that's just recent that I think speaks against the narrative that this is not going to, you know, be helpful, this model that's out there, because there are a lot of positives to the model. West Virginia. So Steve Westfall, Delegate Westfall, on January 19th of this year, he introduced a bill that would be purely reporting of medical loss ratios. And we know, Bob, I bet you know this too, from California, they pass a reporting bill and the dental insurance companies don't change their behavior. Again, we want the value to change for patients. So West Virginia, Delegate Westfall, January of this year, chair of the Banking and Insurance Committee, very influential. He introduces a reporting only bill. The model becomes official at NCOIL. It's his model. He has, on February 1st, replaced the reporting only bill with the NCOIL model, which has a lot of benefits over and above reporting. That's exactly what we want. That's what we want on behalf of the patients in this country. So again, and Dr. Riscala, I believe he, as I've said earlier, I think he has a lot of great things to say, expertise to share. He's more than just optics. I agree with all of that. But I think, Bob, I really take your point. Let's stay focused on the goal. And that's what we did.
Yeah, Chad, I'm going to offer you right in public right now a 2 hour of my time for you to come and you and I talk about all this, because I want you to be in touch with members. I think this is really important for people who are fighting the fight to be at the forefront. I understand our esteemed president and president-elect and our trustees need to be the face of the ADA, but I think there may be time for a little bit of change for people who are working towards policy to come up forward and talk about it. I mean, Mike, you're one of the most influential people in dentistry, right? Isn't that the magazine said so? So I mean, why not bring you guys up to the people? But I looked at that picture. I'm like, I know Ray, but who's the other guy? I mean, I had no idea who these people are, and then all of a sudden we hear that you're setting policy for the rest of us. I'm going to stop here, and we're going to go through basically the model, right? This is the introduction of what it is.
Hey, Bob,
Yes.
I have to jump in and just offer a bit of clarification.
Sure.
Neither Mike nor I determine policy. That is not true. And
Yeah.
please don't say it, because it just is not true. We will
That's
look
by
to
the
the
House of
ADA
Delegates.
policy, and that's what we always operate from.
Mhm.
The House
I
of Delegates
understand.
determines policy, Bob.
I understand, and I understand that is a pain point for you guys to say, but I said it. Everything I say comes because there is a reason. You guys are the experts. We drill teeth, right? When I say people who set policies, you give advice to the trustees, to the president. I'm not going to be able to, not everybody is Boris Collett that knows all these policies. We are dumb dentists. We need to be explained like a child what this is, and then I form a policy to tell you, okay, I agree with this. But please do not discount yourselves. You guys, in my eyes, are very, very important. Linda sets the tone. Linda sets the path. But Dr. Edgar, I'm sorry, I feel like we're friends, Linda.
I love you calling me Linda. I'm just fine with that. Other than Princess Linda or something like that.
I basically rely on you guys to help Linda find that path faster. And that's where it is. So let's talk about this model. If anybody doesn't know what DLR is or MLR, it was a piece of legislation that was brought on by the American, what is that, the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. And we as dentists worked really hard to carve ourselves out of that. So the MLR, medical loss ratio, did not apply to us. And what it is, it forces, simplifying it, forces insurance companies to spend a certain amount of money that they collect as premium on patient care. There are data that says that only 6 to 7%, counting all the salaries of these executives of insurance companies, only 6 to 7% is basically cost for them. The rest is profit. Now, again, that can be debated. None of us work for insurance companies to defend them. Let's assume that. They can approach me for another interview. Based on the current model, and I want maybe Mike or Chad or Dr. Markarian, anybody who wants to take this, based on the current model that you guys have, that with the NCOIL, how is an insurance company going to be fined in violation? Can someone explain that to me? That we have a set of rules, a framework. How are they considered in violation?
Chad, can I take this?
Yeah, please, Dr. Markarian. Yeah.
So let's start off with, in this language, the medical loss ratio is determined using a statistical analysis starting with the mean, and then using one standard deviation below the mean as the starting point to become an outlier, and by not meeting the MLR guidelines. So once a company falls below that, so if a state passes a law in 2024 that goes into effect January 2025, the insurance companies will report the prior 3 years. So after the analysis, any company that falls below one standard deviation would be considered an outlier in not meeting the MLR. They then have 24 months from the time they were determined to be an outlier to correct that prior to an MLR being imposed upon them, because the language says the insurance commissioner shall impose an MLR on any outlier who's been an outlier for more than 24 months. So at that point, they would have an MLR set on them. And then from that point, they would have 18 months to come into compliance before the enforcement begins. So I know there's a little bit of confusion where in the language it says 2 years before an MLR, and then it says 42 months after being identified as an outlier, they would be in line for enforcement. Those are not additive. That doesn't add up to 5.5 years. Those are concurrent. The first 2 years allow them to get into compliance. If they aren't there, they get an MLR, and then they only have 18 months after that before enforcement begins.
So the total is 42 months.
42 months, 3.5 years.
So I understand in the political time frame, 42 months sounds short, but you're telling me if an insurance company violates this act, it takes 42 months to enforce this?
There is a time allowed for them to get into compliance. And I know where you're going with this, but no company is going to change overnight. And I will say this, that when I had my discussions with NADP, they are afraid of the reporting aspect of this, because likely they will look bad no matter what they report. So,
Randall, any insurance company looks good?
No, but they will look even worse, because now we would have public, transparent data, in data we've never seen before. And I know there's also a misconception that this data is out there. This data is not out there. And it is publicly available. The Insurance Commission will publish it on their website, and entities like the ADA will be able to take that data and analyze it and call people out. And
Hey, Bob, could I add
Yes.
one other thing to what
Sure.
Dr. Markarian said? So one thing that I want to make sure all the listeners understand is, when the dental loss ratio is set on that outlier plan, it is at least the average. So let's
Right.
take the case of Maine, 2020 data. The average, the mean of the plans in Maine is 81%. So the Department of Insurance must set a dental loss ratio at least the mean. Okay, that's going to drive eventually drive these plans. They do not want to be outliers. They do not want to be outliers, Bob. They'll improve their behavior. And what does that do? It increases the mean over the years. And the last critical point is you don't get to remove the dental loss ratio once you've come into some sort of compliance. No, you have to abide by it from that point forward.
Okay, first of all, I'm going to mention that Chad did ask me what to call me, and I told him call me Bob. I don't want you to think that he's.
Oh
he's
yeah, I
a
thought I covered it at
respectful
the
guy.
beginning, but yes, please, thanks for
Yeah.
the reminder.
Yeah, no, I want people to know, because you're calling Dr. Mark here and Dr. Mark, I don't want people I want to, Chad, I want to pump you up. You're our soldier, right? I want to make sure people understand and
Yes.
value your brand, right? And we'll talk about that later. Okay, let me get back to this. So we got 42 months to comply. I want people to understand, just in case they're like me, they don't understand what standard deviation is. It's a range. It's a range. You get your mean, not average. You get your mean, and then you have a range of numbers that if they fall in between this range, they are in compliance. I want to know from anyone who wants to volunteer, what makes these insurance companies to not want to be at this lower range, at the lower limits of this range? What is going to push them to go into this higher ones?
So that's actually pretty easy. So two things would. So the companies that are outliers below that. I mean, in the end, those companies have two choices. They pull out of the market and a company with a higher MLR takes over those lives, or they improve their business practices and their MLR goes up. So statistically, over time, the mean, the MLR, will go up over time as companies come into compliance. As more companies come into compliance, that range narrows down to becoming much, much smaller. And so they can shoot for the low end of the range, but next year they're going to be an outlier because as everything goes up, they will fall behind. So statistically speaking, they will not be in compliance the following year, likely, if they aim for the low end.
I'm so glad you said that, because at 4 o'clock in the morning today, I'm running simulations on this model. And this simulation that I kind of, thank you for Google for me trying to look at other people's ideas, brought something up, and I want you to guys maybe explain it to me. If we have an area, let's exaggerate this as in there are only 3 insurance companies there, and one is doing 50% MLR, one is doing 55, and the other one is doing 60. 55 becomes the average. There is a clause in this agreement that makes them compliant even if they're an outlier. And that is if they're within the 3% of the average MLR in that area. And that's why I 100% disagree with you, and I want you to tell me if I'm wrong, is that the average is not only going up, it's going down. This is the race to the bottom. Okay, this is the falling floor. The floor that you guys have established, I feel like it's going to drop. I've listened to a lot of people, including you guys. I've read the handout you've given to the states. I've listened to Dr. Riscala's video response a couple of days ago. I just don't feel comfortable that this is, for no pun intended, has any teeth because of that 3%, the 3% from the average. Can you explain that to me, please?
Sure. So initially, the standard deviation will be higher than 3%, likely, based on simulations. as it goes down, it will probably fall slightly below 3%. And we set the 3% as the limit. I think that when you say that they will drive it down, again, you mention optics a lot, and it makes it really easy to paint the insurance companies as greedy publicly if they drive down the MLR, if it starts to drop over time. And they know that. I mean, they know that that is ripe territory to paint them as the villains that we've always believed they are, right? So I don't see it going down. I also don't see states with only 3 carriers. And I know that's the concern is a smaller sample size leads to a larger standard deviation. You're correct. But I think over time, the likely scenario is that MLR rises until at some point it plateaus down the road, 7-10 years, somewhere in that range.
So,
And there's just a couple of points, Bob. Bob, can I jump in just a couple of things?
sure, go ahead.
One is, there was some danger, I think, and what we saw in 2023, introduction of some of bills by the state societies. We saw 13 bills get introduced, 3 became law, and they were basically reporting. So we saw that legislatively, while ballot question 2 was out there, it was difficult to get over the finish line on the legislative side. What we would like to see is the full-born dental loss ratio. But what also happened was in New Mexico, they imposed through regulation a 65% medical loss ratio. And in my view, that's too low, right? But what we have in the model is a mechanism that drives that ratio up. But also, so just so you know, in the discussions with legislators that I've been part of, there was a reluctance to nail down to a specific number right off the bat. But the final thing I'll say is, we at the ADA, we view the NCOIL model as a floor. If a state society sees and can encourage legislators to see that something, in my view, again, I'd like to see something maybe above 80%, but something, if they want to push forward with a percentage, go for it. Go for it. Just know that in the background, this NCOIL model exists. And that also will be, as Dr. Markarian, as Randall, if he'll let me say it, as Randall is saying, it's pushing this forward. And the last point I'll make, very critical. We want dental loss ratio to be accepted around the country. And that's what this model does. It makes it an accepted concept. It's not something that just Massachusetts is doing.
Yes, I appreciate that explanation. I'm going to make a couple of comments, and maybe there's a question in there you guys can come in. First, to Randall's point, I'm supposed to now hope that an insurance company is worried about their reputation in a market and forego hundreds of millions of dollars in profit just because they're going to look bad. I just don't see that happening. And Chad, I'm a big believer in no compromise with enemies, right? I know it's not possible in politics, and you guys are more in politics. I do have some experience in that from my background, but I don't want to see a DLR or an MLR that ties the hands of my executive director here in Illinois not to be able to get what we actually want accomplished. Something watered down, something that, and this is what I was afraid of, that it was going to get watered down going around, if this Massachusetts model was not. Mike, go ahead, interject, please.
Yeah, Bob, look, you're raising good points that things that we discussed. The legislative process is, as you know, it's messy and it's unpredictable. Any consultant that tells you they know what's going to happen, don't trust them. They're lying to you. They don't know what's going to happen. But politics is a process, and getting something that approaches, and there's a lot of things in the NCOIL model that have elements of Massachusetts, is better than not getting anything at all. Because right now the status quo is there is no DLR in the vast majority of states. So having something that is a good first step that creates a floor. And I know a lot of people don't like us using that, but we do that all the time in the legislative process. The great thing about this is, I think Randall touched on this, is it makes it transparent that the insurance companies, if your insurance company example is only giving out 55% of their money in patient care, who do you think cares most about that? Legislators. When they hear that, they're going to go, wait a minute, you're kidding me. Employers are going to say, I mean, half of the money that I'm paying is going to patient care and the other is going to whatever. So transparency is key to this. Yeah. And making the insurance companies, and I think they are concerned about their reputation, the transparency is going to make that available. We'll make it available to legislators. And this is where it's key. And I'll talk more about this probably later, that our dentists get involved. You know, Bob, dentistry crushed it during COVID. We crushed it during COVID. We sent 600,000 emails to Capitol Hill. We got the PPP that we wanted. We got PPE, all these other provisions that help dentistry not only stay alive, but thrive through COVID. So transparency is important, but being involved in the legislative process, and this is a process, is absolutely key. And that's why I got to tell you, being on your show is going to help us get this message out. When COVID hit, a lot of people were saying, what the hell is anybody doing on this? But when they heard the explanation, they said, I'm going to get politically involved. They did. It made a difference. This is why we're a great family to belong to, because we know when our dentists get involved, they make a difference.
And I want to stress that as well, because I know some people that actually blame the ADA for certain things during COVID. I'm not one of them. I believe that you guys did a great job. I mean, it was unknown territory. Everybody makes mistakes in the beginning, right? I mean, we don't know. I told my wife, I don't ever want to work again when this happened. I think I'm going to die, you know, and then I realized I didn't even need an N95 mask. I mean, the regular mask would have been fine, right? So there are a lot of unknown, and I want to thank you guys. And I didn't do this in the beginning. Like a little quick break here. I want to actually thank all of you for dedicating your lives, professional lives and regular lives. It seems like Chad's been going around the country into these battles for us. And you also, Mike, I want to thank you for that service. People like me didn't do that. You know, I was self-centered, selfish dentist sitting at home, just complaining. They didn't do this. They didn't do this. And there are a lot of people doing that. And it's my job now to help to bring those people in. I want them to see this and say that, look, the ADA is changing. This would have never happened 5 years ago. You would have not come here, right? Linda Edgars and Ray Comillas and Brett Kessels of the world are changing things for us to communicate better. I think Randall.
Can I, Bob, really quickly?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Bob, really quickly. Just on your point on never negotiating with enemies. You know, I think the leadership, and I appreciate it. And again, going back, I want to just repeat the frustration we hear about dental plans all the time. We hear it, we know it, we want to put patients and dentists first in all regards. The value of these plans, I mean, $1,000 to $1,500 annual maximum, all these cost sharing. How do we change that structure? I think MLR is a great way to advance that down the road. I think the leadership of the ADA and making the decision on this model, they understood that it would be nice. It would be wonderful if we could do just have the people vote, because we know in Massachusetts, if they hear how much of my premiums going to profit and administration, suddenly we would win on that. It's different, as we say in the business, under the dome. It's different in the legislature. You know, there's a lot of interested parties. The calculation that doing the most good for the most number of people by having a baseline set at NCOIL that's better than just reporting, it was essential. And as Mike said, it's starting the conversation. Now that these state societies around the country are equipped with this model, they're going to move it forward. And I hope that it eventually turns out that we have basically Proposition 2 around the country. And this is a stepping stone to getting that done.
I have two more questions here, and I want to do this, and then I'm going to give you guys the floor. Randall, go for it. The
All right,
first,
thank
go
you.
ahead.
I just, while it's still, semi-fresh in everyone's mind, the whole reputation thing. So, I agree. In general, insurance companies could care less about reputation because they're there to make money, except for one thing. If now everybody's data is published in a state, and I'm not going to use any real company names, but if company A goes to an employer and says, hey, I'd love to, insure your employees, and they say, what's your medical loss ratio? It's 57%. And then the next one comes in and says, ours is 75% or whatever it is. They're going to use that competitively against one another, and don't think they won't. I think that's the underlying thing that actually makes the reporting key, is they're going to start using that against each other in bidding out contracts. So they may not care about reputation per se, but they care about winning in competition for getting new insured, new businesses to go with them. And then the second point I just want to hit on is the data. And so again, going back to, hey, we would love to all see Massachusetts law have been passed with 83% in every state, but the honest truth is it would have been a handful of states. So we'd end up with a handful of states worth of data. And the data is the treasure trove here. That's what gets us a better understanding of how they operate. And if we could have 5 to 7 states worth of data, or 30 to 40 states worth of data, the broad data gives us a clearer picture, because the insurance companies don't share that information. It's hard for us to glean certain information from them. And this opens it up to giving us an insight that we've never had before, being able to compare market to market, state to state, and look at a broad context of what's going on in the dental benefit industry.
And that's great that you bring up. I also feel like that this is was mentioned in legislation in Massachusetts, and it was an influencing factor. This reporting that everybody talks about the insurance companies now, that all of them have to open up their books for us to see what they're doing, and it's an important piece. But again, Mo Riscala wrote it. Why not call him? Anyways, this is a really important.
We will be working with Mo Riscala, okay?
Okay.
We
Thank you.
value him, period.
It's not because I've known the guy not that long, right?
Yeah.
It's because I'm lazy. I don't want to go find out. This guy is obsessed. I mean, I
know.
talked to him.
Listen
and
to
he
every
knows
word
this
that he's
stuff.
put out.
Right?
Yeah.
He's dead. He doesn't have to do these things. He has realistic. I mean, the guy wants to work for me for free. Why not use him? That's at least my thing in there. I'm not supposed to get this excited. Sorry. My coaches told me, don't get too excited. They won't come back. So here's a question I have. Okay. Having spoken, they're not actually too happy with me, some of the members in Connecticut. I want to bring them up because they're at the forefront right now, right? They're our test case, Connecticut and Rhode Island. I've talked to some people, and they have a piece of legislation, specifically Connecticut, that is very similar to what's going on in Massachusetts. And they feel that this is an impediment to them and not any help, that it's going to basically get rid of what they had on the books and do this. And there is an article, I don't know if you've seen it or not, about this, and that's very concerning to me. Can someone explain to me, maybe Chad, that why they shouldn't be concerned? Or Mike, I give you time for both of you. This is important. I need to get on the good side of Connecticut. They don't like me as much as Linda does. So I need to get on their good side. Go ahead, Mike.
All right. Well, first of all, we are blessed to have a real bulldog executive director in Connecticut that she is zeroed in on getting Massachusetts, bless her heart, as she should be. We applaud that. We love that. I saw the statement she put out. I agree with it. She said, the NCOIL model, fine, it's over there, but that's not what we want. We support that. We applaud her going after that. I'll point out that let's not let anybody think that in any state, this is going to be a walk in the park. And we proved that in 2023. This is going to be a fight. It's going to be a fight. And every dentist in Connecticut's got to engage in this fight. But even if right now, I think Virginia wants to do a transparency bill, guess what the insurance companies are going to do? They're going to say, we don't even want that. It's going to be a fight. So that has never changed. It is always going to be a fight politically, Bob. The great advantage about us talking about this is that we begin to engage in that fight. So if I'm Connecticut, I'm going to say, nope, NCOIL model is not good enough for us. And my dentists and their patients want more. And if you get your grassroots going and you're united with your message, you can win that. I guarantee you can win that. You know, if you looked at polls and you looked at where dentists are, and dentists are at the top of and almost every profession in this country is being well respected. And then you look at insurance companies, we got a lot going for us. So it's the dentists getting active on this from a grassroots perspective, meeting with their legislators, writing in when it's appropriate. It's going to make the difference. But I'm going to say that's true in every state, no matter what's introduced.
Chad?
Yeah, and then obviously Dr. Edgar can jump in. So, one thing on Kathleen Garrity, she's the exec out in Connecticut. Agree with Mike. Terrific job on the statements. Exactly right. We have a program at the ADA called the State Public Affairs Program that offers grants to the state societies to get advocacy done. Guess who's a grant recipient that we fully support? Connecticut. We want them to succeed there. But let me give you a counterexample. Mike mentioned Virginia. I want to give you two more. Utah and Ohio. Utah, not a chance in the world anything on DLR or medical loss ratio would have happened. We just talked to, or actually Dr. Kessler, Brett Kessler is out in Utah. He just informed us they can now feel they're equipped. The legislators are willing to listen and perhaps push something forward with a medical loss ratio based on NCOIL. Same thing in Ohio. There was an Ohio legislator that he is, again, like Delegate Westfall, high up on the insurance committee side. This Ohio legislator, when I would talk to him at these meetings, I don't even know about the reporting. It's not a good idea. He heard all of the different back and forth between the different people presenting, but he on his own reached out to the Ohio Dental Association and said, you know what, this NCOIL model, now that I understand more about this, I think this might be a good idea in Ohio. So you have to think, again, going back to our main focus, as many of these dental plans operating under some version of DLR in the country, that's better. And it's an iterative process, and let's push forward together.
You know, Chad, I'd love to agree with you. Two things. I don't know enough on the subject, and I rely on experts again to tell me. And also, there are states that have had some kind of a DLR, such as California, that it's basically ineffective, it appears to be. I just don't know.
Bob, jumping in there, that's because it's reporting only. That's what we got beyond with the NCOIL model. 10 years, you're right, 10 years in California. And by the way, though, I don't want to, CDA, the California Dental Association, fought hard for that reporting, and Dr. Riscala used that data. So again, just pointing to the iterative process of this whole thing. Dr. Riscala used that great California data. And by the way, California Dental Association has like Dr. Markarian's pointed to that data to help them get other dental insurance reform initiatives across the finish line. It's critical data to have.
Yes. Again, I guess we need to wait and see. Dr. Edgar, did you want to say something on that? I thought maybe you raise your hand.
Well, I do have an overall point, and I can wait till you give us our
Thank you.
30 seconds at the end.
Yes,
if you'd
you're
like.
you're gonna be like the best act. You're gonna close the show.
Yeah.
You're gonna be my star. There are something disturbing that I saw, and it's really, again, I'm a dumb social media guy, right? I don't get rattled much, but this thing kind of rattled me, and it made me feel angry and hurt and depressed inside. And that what caused my texting with Dr. Komiya, is that I saw press release and documents with the NADP that literally mocked us, that literally was celebrating this as a victory for them. And I just don't, whether or not it's true or not, whether or not they know what they're talking about, I just don't feel that we were heard. I don't want to say represented, but I don't think we were heard properly. Are there any plans, Dr. Edgar, are there any plans to come out with a massive email and this articles thing? I know we have this and it's going to go out there, but to kind of start educating people. And they mocked Massachusetts' victory as arbitrary numbers. I mean, these are the things that they do. And when members look at it and they're like, where is my ADA? Where is my ADA to come and fight them? You have to pick a side. This is my point here, right? We have to pick a side. Doesn't matter if they're a member or a non-member. You have to pick a side of dentists. And I want to see what your plans are to kind of make me feel a little bit better looking at these articles that the NADP is putting out, and they're celebrating it.
Well, you got to realize that's their association. So they got to make themselves look good. We are going to be putting out a communication on this to all of our members with my name signed to it, explaining all about NCOIL, trying to, get the facts out there of why it's a good thing. What Chad's and Randall and Mike are talking about, right now, so many states can't even get out of the chute. And we need to get out of the chute, and we need to move to the top. And I will tell you that divisiveness and criticalness about ADA is taking a lot of our energy and keeping us from being able to do these things. We are a organization right now of 160,000 very intelligent dentists. And we are here to help every dentist, not just our members, but every dentist succeed. And the only way we can do that is by coming together. I've been saying that all year. I said that to California. We are stronger together. NCOIL is a good model, and it speaks to every part of what was passed in Massachusetts. We keep emphasizing Massachusetts was an initiative that the public voted on. This is legislation. You have to get legislators behind you. It's a lot more difficult, and
Yes.
There's a lot of back and forth. And anybody that's been a delegate on the House of Delegates floor knows that. That is
Yeah.
trying to get to, an end. We all want the same thing. We want the best thing for the patients and the dentist. And that's where we're going with this. And when I go on the site and people push out your site, I've spent probably 6 hours answering questions on your site, and it gets buried. So people don't really get the answers, but there was a lot of facts that, were pushed out that weren't true.
I want to say a couple of things, and I let you talk, Randall. This is gravy for me that you guys gave me in half an hour extra, and I appreciate it. We're going to give 5 minutes to Dr. Edgar to say what she wants to address the dentist. But I want you to address Dr. Edgar's comment right now, is that divisiveness isn't necessarily when people criticize you. When people criticize the ADA, this is what I teach. I don't want to say teach, but this is what I talk to young dentists when they call me and go, I got a bad review. I'm like, use it to improve. Use it to improve.
Yeah.
No one is going to go out of their way to write a bad review for your business. You did something that caused that. I blame the American Dental Association for lack of communication with members and non-members. Members have already in there with you, right? We need to reach the non-members. I know you guys probably have heard. I just filled out application for my advocacy group, okay, for a 501c6. And my job is going to be communicating with you guys, meaning I want to bring the people to you. So when you see these comments online, don't look at it as divisiveness, look at it as a hint. What can I do to change this person's mind? When someone says they have their hands in the pockets of the insurance companies, you know what I tell them? I tell them, I hear your frustrations, but you know that's racketeering, right? They can literally find out really easily if somebody's getting paid. So I want them to be realistic. The reason they're not realistic is because they don't see a value in what Chad and Mike and Dr. Markarian and you, Linda, have done in the past 50 years. Come and talk about it. Dr. Markarian, you wanted to say something?
I was just going to say, I mean, what NADP put out was spin, and obviously because that's what they needed to do. And just to characterize the difference in my last conversation with NADP compared to every prior conversation with them was they were not as monolithic as they have been in the past. In the past, it was just no. Hey, it's COVID. There's inflation on PPE. We need help on reimbursement. No, you could present a great argument. What we got in that call was a group in chaos because it was bad or worse. Which way were they going? In this deal. So I get it. They've got to spin it however they've got to spin it. But I also heard the spin pre-Massachusetts on what they were saying on why Massachusetts would be so bad. So if they believed that then, why would they embrace this now? They're just trying to make their member organizations feel better. That's where they're at. We did get the best of them on this in a lot of ways and at least got the ball rolling. And I know it wasn't everything, but I do feel like it moves it forward and it puts them on the back foot for the first time that I've ever seen in all my involvement in dealing with dental benefit issues. And so that gives me hope to put it to them because, again, trust me, I am no fan of the dental benefit industry and what I've had to deal with in addressing them directly as a representative for ADA. But I feel like this is our chance where we're going to start chipping away more and more because they're going to lose the protection, the veil that hides what they do when they have to publish all their data that relates to how they pay claims and how much they're paying.
Thank you for that. I want to take a few minutes. I want to give the floor to Chad, Mr. Olson, to address the concerns. And you know, again, we're not in politics. We're not in big corporations that people switch jobs here and there. I want the concern that a lot of the members and non-members have is that who negotiated for us? Chad Olson, let me Google him and who he is. And actually, I think it's a good idea that you put those on your LinkedIn because you don't have anything to hide. I think if you wouldn't have put it on the LinkedIn, we would have been a lot more suspicious. So I want you to take some time, Chad, to let us know who Chad Olson is, where you've been, what have you been doing about in your career, and why the members should not have any concerns. I don't anymore, right? You're here. You and I are going to go at it, hopefully, in the future as far as debates go. But tell me a little bit about this concern. Should they be concerned that you worked for an insurance company?
Bob, can you give me, I'll do 30 seconds. Give me 30 seconds.
Mike's got 30 seconds, and Chad, you are muted. So just in case you're coming in, remember that.
So when we took the fight on, we took the insurance companies on McCarran Ferguson. I have to tell you, the first 4 years, I made a mistake. I didn't know everything I needed to know about McCarran Ferguson. And it wasn't until somebody I knew, a lobbyist I knew in Washington, pointed it out to me that we were barking up the wrong tree, that I realized, holy cow, I can't believe that I didn't know enough about this. I never wanted, we eventually repealed McCarran-Ferguson, which I could do a whole show with you on that. But I never wanted to make that mistake again. I didn't want to waste 4 years. So I said, I'm going to find somebody that knows the insurance world inside and out, that knows the pressure points that make the insurance industry respond. And so when the opportunity came for me to hire Chad, I jumped at it because he is passionate for the ADA. He's passionate for what dentists do for their patients, but he knows the insurance world inside and out. And now Chad.
Well, thanks, Mike. And thanks, Bob, for the opportunity to say this. And yes, I've been with the ADA for 7 years. Prior to that, I did work for Delta Dental Plans Association and did lobbying both at the state and the federal level. I came to the ADA, number one, to work for somebody like Mike Graham. So I just have to say that out loud. He's great to work for. It's been a pleasure these last 7 years. But also because, you know, my father was a provider. He was a podiatrist. And I saw firsthand, you know, I was a kid who lived through him losing businesses and not being a great businessman and not knowing I said one time, Dad, how many dental, I mean, not dental, he was a podiatrist, but how many plans do you take? Well, I'll just take whoever comes in, any rep that comes in, I'll take their insurance. And having at that point, knowing something about the industry, I was like, do you ever think about the impact on your practice and anything like that? And so he just was one of those guys who just was a great doctor and didn't really have the business acumen he needed. So it's been a terrific opportunity for me this 7 years to help dentists. You know, sometimes you can kind of, in my mind, put my father in their place, but help dentists around the country where they don't have all the time in the world. You know, Bob, you used the phrase, the wet finger dentist. They don't have all the time in the world to think about all these things. And, you know, you have a virtual credit card come in and your front office staff just cashes it. And the dental plan is not only charging you a network discount, but they're also going to charge you a fee to cash your check with this virtual credit card that's just shown up in the office. You don't know anything about it. And that's just that's the tip of the iceberg. And so anyway, it's, as Mike said, it's been my great pleasure, passion to work on this, use the knowledge that I have, because you know, at the end of the day, as I said in the beginning, we're all rowing the same direction. It's putting dentists and patients first. And I'll go back to my something's got to give comment, because something does have to give. I mean, the value of these dental plans is down, and they're the only thing they compete on at this point is the price that they're charging the employers to offer the coverage. And that's wrong. It should be that the value they provide and how they're competing is for patients and being a better product that gets them to good oral health. And how does that redound? It redounds to the benefit of the dentists that are serving them. Thanks for the opportunity to say something.
Thank you, Chad. And again, as I said, you and I may or may not agree on certain things. We may have our discussions, but at the same time, I know I get emotional and I want idealistic world. And I need someone like Mike or Chad on my corner to say, hey, take it easy. This is the way the world works, because that's not our world. And everybody who thinks that they can walk in and demand things, the politicians are going to look at us and like, yeah, who are you? When was the last time you contributed to my campaign, right? So I understand what you're saying, and I want, and I'm going to hand the floor to Dr. Edgar to kind of lead us into the future. But I also want Dr. Edgar, Dr. Comia, and the trustees, such as Dr. Markarian, to bring these guys to the front. This helps accountability and transparency, right? Nobody knows who Mike Graham or Chad Olson are. If they hear them talk, this is going to help the ADA to bring members in. The number one problem people complain about, to me, is that we don't know what they do. And you have to take responsibility for the poor communication and bad communication, such as your publishing department at the ADA. I don't know who runs it, and nobody knows who runs it. And they put out information that is going to drive members away. So these are the things that I want Dr. Edgar actually respond. What are you doing, Dr. Edgar, to change the behavior of the ADA, our ADA? I don't know if you saw it or not. I posted it in my
I
group.
have seen that many times.
Just paid my dues, and I am
Hey.
going to pay more to ADPAC, and
Hey.
I am paying. Those are important. People don't understand that the ADPAC needs a war chest. If they
Yep.
don't have it, we're spending thousands while the insurance companies are spending millions. And to sit out there and drink your $30 Starbucks breakfast and drive your $200,000 car and say, well, I'm not going to pay $5,000 a year to be represented. These are silly things that is my job to bring those. You guys can't say that. I'm going to bring those dentists down to earth that spend the money to be represented, because we are at war. And if we are not going to help you guys in that war, then we don't have the right to complain. I'm going to go back to it. So Dr. Edgar, you have all the time until you want. You're going to take us home and tell us what your plans are. Tell us who you are. Tell us the fact that you want to help people like Mike and Chad take us to the promised land of independent dentists.
Yes. Well, I've been a leader at the national level probably for 25 years in two different organizations. I've been president, the two largest organizations, AGD and ADA. Been a delegate that whole time, helped with legislation, back and forth with laws that we're trying to get passed. I just want to emphasize, the work that Chad Olson and Mike Graham have done through 5 years ago. I'll brag a little. Our state, Washington, brought forth a resolution to the House of Delegates to provide money for insurance legislation reform. We asked for $2 million. It was a struggle. We got 600,000. It did pass. And now guess what we're spending? 2.7 million a year to give to states to pass insurance legislation that's helping every dentist every day, every moment in their practices if they take insurance. Virtual credit cards, network leasing, prior authorization, non-covered services. I was on Mommy Dentists, and one of their members, their people that's not a member of ADA, said, well, what's ADA doing for us anyway? Well, we've passed 149 laws in the last 5 years. And she said on the post, she said, if they would just do something with assignment of benefits, I'd sign up in a minute. So I went on the site and I said, well, actually, we have passed assignment of benefits in 25. We have 25 total laws. And if every state did that, they would give, much more to their people. One of my pillars, I have 3 pillars this year: connect, collaborate, and communicate. So communication is one of my pillars. Last Monday, we have an officer call every Monday. We bring up pain points that members have. Get it out there. I've asked, and Brett agrees, we would like to have some town halls that go to members and non-members and talk about what ADA is doing and listen to what non-members' pain points are. I am not afraid of questions. I've been a teacher for 15 years. I love it. I want people to know, I want to blast from the rooftops all that ADA does to protect this profession. And unfortunately, our younger dentists that have 400,000 in debt don't realize we're out there protecting your right to do whatever you want on your patients. That can be taken away in a moment. That can be taken away by a legislator that's never picked up a handpiece. You know that. And that's what we're dealing with. We have increased my president's letters. I don't know how many people read them. We will be having a letter about this for more communication. We will try to be more proactive than reactive. I guess we thought the NCOIL thing was pretty good because we'd heard from states that, liked it. And then all of a sudden it blows up on, for some people. And so, you know, sometimes you don't know until something happens that you should have done something differently. But we are trying to be more agile. We have two webinars today, yours and another one. We've got one tomorrow on another site. I just want to thank you, Bob, because you know I like you. And you know that I appreciate the fact that you give people a platform. I hand out my email and my phone number everywhere I go. And I say, email me if you have a problem or if you have a suggestion. And that suggestion to bring $2 million for insurance legislation came from 3 people in the state of Washington, 3 grassroots people, not the board. And some of our best ideas come from the grassroots people. Right, Mike? Some of our best legislation. And that's what our House of Delegates is all about. So get involved. If you're not a member, you know, if you want to complain, that's fine. I'll listen to the complaints if they're legitimate and they're based on truth. But it's hard for me when I read the posts and they're talking about we get paid by the insurance companies. I would love to have seen that check, you know, in the mail. We do not get paid. You know, so many things are spewed out there. So working together, I am so excited because the potential that we have to improve what we're doing for our dentists and our public is through the roof. And I thank you again for giving us the time. I thank Mo. I mean, he spent $3 million of his own money to get this rolling. And we came in, I was budget and finance chair. We had spent a lot of money on IT. And I said, you know, Abdul came up to me and he said, we got to do this. I said, yes, we got to do this because I believe so much in insurance legislation. So thank you so much. And thanks to Mo. And we will use him to help the states because he is a wealth of knowledge. And I've said that over and over again. So thank you so much.
Dr. Markarian, do you have anything in closing?
No, I think I've said everything. I guess just briefly, I mean, dental benefits issues are my passion. After spending 4 years on the Council on Dental Benefits and working with Mike Graham and Chad on a number of issues over the last several years, we want to find the best way forward for our members because the number one issue that they complain about are completely dental benefit related. I mean, that's the pain point for everyone. So, you know, I think that we have a great team to advance the issues related to dental benefits and to continue to improve on that year after year. And I think that's exactly what we've been doing and what we're trying to do. And I want to see that going forward.
Thank you very much. At the bottom of my email are links to my schedule. One of them says intro, one of them says recording. I invite all of you that if you have something to say, take one of those links and come and talk to me. You have something good that you want to report or something bad you want to report. My time is yours for free indefinitely. Okay, dentistry has been real good to me and I want to give back. And this way, let's work together to bring the message to non-members as well as members. Non-members are very, very important. We need them. And that's what I'm trying to do. I want to thank you, all of you, for doing this. Once again, I want to stress that this would have never happened. We owe to the leadership of the American Dental Association, Linda Edgar, Dr. Kessler, and Dr. Comia, who pushed for this to happen so we can all talk. And I really appreciate it. Once again, thank you very much. And we will see you guys soon.